This is episode 351 of the Super League Pod. This week, the focus is on the battles for playoffs and relegation on the field, and between Derek Beaumont and any old rugby fan from the internet off the field. We recap round 20 match action and give our views on the French value-added spat, golden point, and refereeing gaffes. There's also Deadwood, drug croissants, and excellent burritos to discuss. So get strapped in. It's SLP time. Hello listeners, welcome along to episode 351 of the Super League Pod. This week you have myself, Mark, and I'm joined by Scoots. Welcome back, Sarah.
Hello.
Shall we tell the listeners that we're both a bit dazed today? It's not a reaction to both our sides losing, but maybe it is a delayed reaction to both our sides losing and know we actually have to talk about it. But we're going to get through quite a lot today, I think. Do you want to start with telling everyone about our wonderful sponsor?
Yeah, so Super League Pod is supported by Rob's Megastore, and Rob's Megastore stocks a wide variety of toys, stationery, arts and crafts ideas, pet accessories, books, and of course Rugby League birthday cards. You can search for Rob's Megastore on eBay, or you can find the link in our episode blog post on superleaguepod.com. SLP listeners can use the code SLP10, which is SLP10 at the checkout to get 10% off any orders over £5. Or if you enter SLP discount, you can give you 10% towards funding the SLP's running costs instead.
Great stuff. So on the show this week, we're going to recap round 20 of Super League. I think plenty of talk, and not just because we don't want to talk too much about our sides losing, but plenty of talk will be about the implications of the results and maybe looking forward to how the season will shape out, because we've got less than 2 months left of the Super League season now, 7 rounds to go, and it's there's a few interesting battles to talk about, so we'll get into that. And whilst we won't personally be offering out any fights to any listeners, we will talk about a clown who did, because Derek has managed to get himself into the Super League news conversation, I guess, this week. Which, so we will talk a bit about that and the comments after the Huddersfield game at Catalans, and we will recap the match action too. From the last week in Rugby League. What I wanted to start with was just a shout out to something interesting that I read this week. We talk about Love Rugby League's website quite a lot because basically they're probably the most comprehensive news source for Rugby League in the Northern Hemisphere right now, and their website's really good, and we get stuff from it every week that we talk to you guys about. But this week, editor James Gordon did a piece, I don't know if you saw it, Sarah, about the number of players each team have used so far this year. So it breaks down all the divisions, talks about the teams who've used the most and the least. I think the least used by any side is 28 players. There's a couple of sides who'd only used 28 players going into last weekend's games, and I can't even remember now the most, but it was 34 or something along those lines, and that seems like it's only going to be going up, because when we talk about the news this week, there'll be a lot of talk about injuries. We're getting to that point of the season with only a couple of months left where a lot of injuries will be coming up as season-ending injuries now. It just seems like there's been, and all the loans, the little 2-week loans and stuff, and your side, Hull FC, Sarah, have brought in quite a few players on loan as well, haven't they, in the last few weeks? It just does feel like there's been much higher jersey numbers this year.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because I think Saints were one of the highest team in terms of number of players used, which surprised me because I know we often talk about how those sides that are at the top are the ones who typically are the ones that, need to use the fewest players and, team stability and all the rest of it. But then I remembered that basically they played an entire second team almost, didn't they, for a match? So that's probably what's led to that being disproportionate to how it, if you excluded that game, I wonder how it would be.
Which is one of the things James did do, isn't it, in terms of not specifically that game. He mentioned that game in his analysis, but he pulled out, as well as the amount of players used, he pulled out the amount of players that have only played once for sides.
Yeah.
And that was a secondary way of showing that the teams have had to change a lot. If you're using a lot of players, but you're using them more than once, it's
Yeah.
not just those one-off fixtures, is it? Like
No.
Wigan had I think 3 players maybe that they'd only used once, and they were all in the game against Huddersfield the week before the Challenge Cup final. Similarly, Saints did that thing against Castleford, didn't they? Where they played, I think there's 8 or 9 players from that side who've only played once this year.
Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah, it's there's lots of ways it went into it, and
Yeah, I must admit, I've not read the analysis, but I have seen the graphic of it. So, yeah, I hadn't realised that he had sort of gone into that more. But yeah, and I guess if you looked at sort of how many like number of players who had played, say, 5 games, that'd give you sort of quite a good figure for just the level of disruption.
And you look at the number of players who are playing in shirt numbers above 30.
Yeah.
And it just, it's I haven't seen anyone doing an analysis on actual injuries, and it does feel like a lot of times in recent years we've said this year feels like the worst for injuries. So maybe it's just that we're more conscious of them, aware of them, they're reported better nowadays, possibly. But it just seems that the size of squads that teams need to be able to get through the season, and now we're getting to a stage where Castleford are saying they've only got 17 players that they can name in this week, and
Rovers have only named 20, and half of them are kids.
Yeah, and they've named in that 20 they've named Jimmy Kynhorst, even though the protocols mean he can't play because he failed a HIA last week. So worrying times around the league, but I'm sure we'll pick up on plenty of news stories that link into that as we go along. So if there's anything we talk about that you want to get in touch about, get involved about, you might want to react to some of the things we say on the show, we really welcome that. On social media, it's at Super League Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or facebook.com/Super League Pod. You can email superleaguepod@gmail.com or visit superleaguepod.com to get the info on each episode and links to the Google Forms for your fan views that we want to be able to share and discuss on the show each week. And don't forget to subscribe in whatever podcast app you're listening to us on, and leave a rating and a review if you can. It all helps. Okay, Sarah, let's not delay any further. Let's rip off that plaster. Let's get into the Super League match reviews.
Yep.
Right, Scoops, it was round 20 of Super League in the books this weekend. Started off last Thursday night at Leeds, a drizzly Leeds, where the Rhinos hosted the Wigan Warriors. It was 24-6 to Leeds at half-time. They came out of the blocks fast. They finished a comprehensive victory, 42 points to 12. 13,368 were there. Liam Moore was the referee. The team stats, Sarah, were ridiculously incomplete. The Super League website has only given us the stats for 5 Leeds players. So, not ideal.
Yeah. Well, then, from those 5 players, individually, Ash Hanley made 226 metres. Zach Hardacre with 5 tackle busts and 155 metres, and Harry Newman with 1 try, 5 tackle busts, 120 metres and 3 offloads. For the losing Wigan team, it was Sam Powell with 56 tackles, of which 13 were marker tackles. Liam Marshall made 109 metres, Liam Farrell with 10 marker tackles and 108 metres, and Cade Ellis with 10 marker tackles and 102 metres.
Yeah, I can only imagine that there would have been several other Leeds players with good numbers if we'd have got the full 17. Cutthroat Jake said, "What a weekend to be a Leeds fan. The town of Wigan received a thrashing with a score of 106-18. I think we can actually supplement that further, can't we, with the wheelchair result, because Leeds and Wigan played in the wheelchair game as well, so it was a hat-trick of wins for Leeds." Jake goes on to say, "It was great seeing Georgia Roach and Harry Newman in all their glory. What games to go out on, as I don't know when I'll see them next. I found out the day after I need another IOP. As for the controversy of Newman's try, didn't something similar happen at Magic?" So first of all the best to John. he told us, didn't he, recently that he'd had an eye up, and that's why he hadn't been in touch as much recently. So hopefully this second op solves your issues and gets yourself sorted up, mate. We're all the best for that. The Newman try. No, there wasn't. There was a couple of barge over tries at Magic Weekend, but they were where the defender went to the side of the marker, weren't they? The one I remember most vividly is the Bretta Faraimo one for Cass. But we might as well touch on it now, the Harry Newman try, because I don't know what you thought about it, but Twitter seemed to just be absolutely aghast at what was a clear and obvious refereeing mistake. That the Rugby Football League have come out through Steve Ganson and said, was a mistake. They didn't meet the standards they aimed for in that incident. I mean, I don't like to. I'm not saying it affected the end result. I don't think Wigan were anywhere near good enough to win, and Leeds were definitely by far the better side. I hope there's going to be a couple of Wigan players accountable for their errors in this match. Willie Isa, for one, but I think James Child has to be accountable as the video ref. Liam Moore has to be questioned for not getting it right on the field of play when he was very close to it. But James Child as the video ref, that's a very clear and obvious error. And people make mistakes, and I'm saying there's nothing sinister in his mistakes, but there surely has to be a consequence when everyone watching the replays whilst it was going up was saying it's against the rules. And yet he came back and said, well, Liam says it's a try, so I say it's a try.
Yeah, I think, and something that I have said quite a lot recently is, in one way, I don't hold the referee on the pitch so responsible because, he gets to see it once in real time. There'd been that massive break, hadn't it? So he's, probably catching his breath from that and everything else and trying to make sure everyone's where they should be. So I kind of can more excuse the referee on the field. However, when you're the video ref and you're getting to look at things numerous times, decisions like that to me should be picked up on.
Yeah. And we saw numerous fans, and we know that fans don't know the rules generally, but we saw numerous fans on Twitter from all clubs actually pretty much quoting what the rule said about burrowing through people's legs and putting the markers at a disadvantage by doing so. So why didn't James Child know that rule?
I don't think it's not even one of those where it's open to interpretation or, it's a really unusual rule. I mean, yes, it's unusual in that it's not something you normally have to make a decision about, but that's because most players aren't stupid enough to do it because everyone knows it's against the rules.
And Harry Newman, for all his brilliance, doesn't seem like the smartest guy, but what a fucking player.
Yeah.
Shall we roll through the rest of the fan views?
Yep. Dr. Bob got in touch and he said, still can't quite believe the game. The Rhinos seem to actually turn up and play. Should there be a bookies inquiry at the start of last week?
Ian Gatwood said, Leeds played like a team possessed. Wigan just didn't turn up and received a wake-up call, which in the bigger picture of things is probably not a bad thing.
John Hamilton said Wigan couldn't seem to get out of their own way and this fed Leeds' confidence, so they grew into the game. Previously, Leeds might have crumbled after French's try. I love the interceptions and chase downs we're seeing at the moment, even though I'd prefer Hanley under the purse. Was Farrell offside for Newman's try? We absolutely love a random halves pairing too. It's Aletsky and Bentley this week.
I tell you what, I think Aletsky would stand up and play anywhere. He played long minutes in this game. I was impressed by Michalewski, and there wasn't. Newman dominated the talk, I think, after. I thought Aletsky maybe deserved a bit more of a shout out. So I'm glad John mentioned him. Leighton Rhino said, what an amazing night at Headingley that was. Best atmosphere I've seen there for years. It was weird though because we seemed to get rolled quite often through the middle in yardage, yet still win by a decent margin. Wigan's mistakes undid their pack's good work. Newman is developing into England's best centre and surely must make the World Cup now along with Ash. The 3-hour drive back home was a pleasure this time. Yeah, a fit Harry Newman has to be in the England side, doesn't he?
You'd think so, but we've seen questionable decisions before, haven't we? And seemingly obvious people